Let's create BB8 using TouchDesigner, and when you're finished, your screen should look pretty much like mine. If you want to download the project file for this, then just look in the description of this video. So here we have a new project. I'm just going to delete the operators that are in there right now. And then let's go ahead and press Tab on the keyboard to open the OP Create dialog. And then under the SOP tab, let's just go ahead and go to Sphere. So this is going to be the body of BB8. So there is Sphere. Let's click on that, drop that in the grid. And the first thing I'm going to do is close the palette so we have more room. Now let's just get the sphere to appear in the background of TouchDesigner. So I right click on the output of sphere. And then in the Comp tab, click on Geometry and place that geometry somewhere well to the right of your sphere. Now we have sphere and geometry. Let's add a new operator using the Tab key on the keyboard. And then in the Comp category, I'm going to click on Camera, drop Camera somewhere above the geometry, and then add a new operator again, and this time add a light and add that somewhere to the right of the camera. Now add a new operator and then go to the top category and click on Render. And then put Render somewhere below Light and to the right of Geo. Finally, click on the blue button of Render that says Display to get that to appear in our background. We have the body of our BB8, but it's too big, so let's go to that sphere. And then in the parameters of the sphere, we're just going to change the radius until that fills maybe about half of the space that it's currently filling. Just go ahead and turn the radius of that sphere down to about 0.6. And now let's move the sphere down to make room for the head of the BB8. So in the sphere parameters under the center parameter, in the Y field, I'm going to turn that down to about 0.4. And you can see that gives us room to make the head of the BB8 now. Let's go ahead and make the head of the BB8 now. So I'm going to add a new operator, and in the SOP category, I'm just going to go to sphere once again. So I'm just creating another sphere, put that somewhere below the previous sphere. Now that we have our sphere, let's go ahead and right click on the output of that sphere. And in the comp category, we're just going to click on geometry, place this geometry. So we placed our geometry. And now we created another sphere, but once again, that's too big. So let's go ahead and turn the size of this sphere down by clicking on the sphere. And then under radius, let's just turn that down until it looks like it's about the size of the BB8 head, which I found to be roughly 0.4. Now let's move the head of the BB8 up a little bit. So in the center parameter of our second sphere's parameters, we're going to go to the Y field of the center parameter, and we're going to change that Y field up to about 0.1. And I actually found that that is best at about 0.13, at least the way that I made this. Now let's go ahead and cut the bottom half of the BB8 head off, because that's a full sphere, but we just want it to be like a half sphere. So let's go ahead and place an operator in between the second sphere and that second geo. Let's just right click on the line connecting the second sphere to the second geo, and then click Insert Operator. And at this point, we want to click on Carve under the SOPs category. So there's Carve. Let's click on Carve and place that just to the right of the second sphere that we have. And now in the parameters of that Carve operator, we're just going to turn off the box that says first U, and we're going to turn on the box that says first V, and then we're going to change that to about 0.542. And now you can see that that cut the bottom half of the BB8 head off. Now let's make sure that the head of the BB8 has a small sloping part near the bottom of the BB8 head. We're basically going to put a cap on the head of the BB8. So let's go ahead and right click on the line connecting Carve to Geo, and then click on Insert Operator. Just click on the word cap and place the cap just to the right of the Carve operator. And then in the parameters of that cap, click on the U tab, and then under the drop-down menu that says first U cap, click on that and click End Cap Rounded. And then change the divisions to 2 and change the scale to about 0.2. And now we have a cap on the end of our BB8 head. So the shape of our BB8 is looking pretty good, I think. Now let's put a texture on the head of the BB8. So what I'm going to do is go to the geo that our BB8 head is connected to. I'm going to add a new operator below this geo here. And in the OP Create dialog, I just want to go to the matte category, the materials category, and click on Phong, and then drop Phong just below that second geo operator we have. Now I'm going to show you how to find the actual texture that I used for the BB8 head. So let's just open our web browser. Once you have your web browser open, just go to Google image search and type in the phrase BB8 head texture. And then in the search results, you see this result here that's just shaped like a square, and it says it's from 3jsworld.com. And you just want to click on this image and then right click on the image and then click download. And once you save this to your computer, we're just going to drag and drop that into TouchDesigner, just like this. Just click on the BB8 texture, drag and drop that into TouchDesigner somewhere near the Phong. I'm just going to move that BB8 head texture next to the Phong. Now let's drag and drop the BB8 head texture onto the Phong until the Phong has the green border around it. Then drop the BB8 texture onto the Phong and click on Color Map. Now drag and drop the Phong onto the geo until the geo has the green border. Drop the Phong and click on Material. And now you can see the head of the BB8 is actually starting to look like it has some texture. So the head of our BB8 has a texture on it, but you can see that it appears to be applied radially to that sphere, and that's not really what we want. We just want our texture to kind of lay on the shape. So what we're going to do is in between the cap that's cutting our BB8 head in half and the geo that is displaying our BB8 head, we want to click on the line in between those two and click on Insert Operator. And then under the SOPs category, we want to click on Texture and then drop Texture in between cap and geo. And now you can see that that changed the way that our texture is being applied to our geometry. So we have the texture being applied to the head of the BB8, but it's not quite the right size. It looks like the cameras or the eyes of the BB8 should be larger. So what we're going to do is change the parameters of the texture operator. So we have this texture operator here. In the parameters of that texture operator, let's change the scale parameter. Just click on scale, move the mouse to the left to change that to about 0.45. So in our texture operator, in the parameters of that, we have our offset parameter. Let's just change that Y value for offset until that texture looks like it is actually being applied in a way that represents the true scale of this. It seems that about 0.37 is a good offset as far as the scale that we chose and blah, blah, blah. So our scale is at 0.45 for X, Y, and Z. And now it looks like that texture is being applied pretty nicely onto the head of the BB8. Now let's do basically the same thing for the body of the BB8. And just so I can kind of have some symmetry in the way our layout is on the screen here, I'm going to move the render setup, which is the light, camera, render operator. So I just got our render setup out of the way so that I can put a Phong above the first geo, which is the body of the BB8. So I just made room for a couple of operators we're going to put in here. So go ahead and add a new operator. This is going to go above our first geo, which is the body of the BB8. So just double click in the grid area, click on the materials category, and then click on Phong, and then place that new Phong above the first geo that we have on our screen, which should be the body of your BB8. And just like we did with the head of the BB8, we are going to now go get a texture image file and basically drop that into TouchDesigner. So fire up your web browser one more time. With your web browser open, you just want to search Google Images for the phrase BB8 texture. And in the search results, you can see probably the first result is from turbosquid.com. Just click on this image. And then when you see the image in the right-hand side of your screen, what I did is I actually took a screenshot of the square that contains these 4 circles, basically. So I took a square-shaped screenshot of this area because I'm not exactly sure how to deal with the extra white space in this texture. So I just screenshotted a square shape out of this image in the general shape that you see on the screen right now. So I just turned that into a square with no large areas of white space. I saved that to my computer, and now let's drag and drop that into TouchDesigner. So here is the texture for a BB8 body. I'm just going to drag and drop that into TouchDesigner, and then I'm going to position that just above our Phong. Now let's do with the body like we did with the head, and we're going to drag the Phong onto the geo until the geo has the green border around it, and then drop Phong onto geo and select material. Now let's drag and drop the body texture onto the Phong that we recently placed, and then select color map. And if we zoom out, you're going to see that the BB8 body now has a texture on it. But just like the head, it's not being applied properly until we add a texture operator in between the geo and whatever is before that. So in this line that's connecting sphere to geo, just right click on that line and click Insert Operator. And then under the SOPs category, just click on Texture and place that texture operator somewhere in between sphere and geo. And now you should see that that applies that in a much better way, but it's still not perfect, so let's adjust that and make that look better. So with that new texture operator selected, just go to the parameters of that and then change the scale to about 0.7. And visually, it actually made these circles bigger. So that looks closer to the actuality of the BB8 character. So the BB8 is looking pretty good, but we can add some more detail, some more realism to it to make it look better. So for the BB8 head, let's just add two operators that's going to make some height or kind of some 3D effect on the head of the BB8. So near that BB8 head texture, let's just go ahead and add a new operator. Let's just go to the top category and then add the edge operator. So click on edge, drop edge somewhere to the right of the BB8 head texture, somewhere to the right of the BB8 head image file. Now let's add something onto the edge operator. So right click on the output of the edge operator, and then in the top category, click on normal map, place that to the right of the edge operator, and now drag the normal map operator onto the Phong, drop that onto the Phong, and click on normal map. And you can see that adds some depth to the head of the BB8. Now let's click on the Phong for the BB8 head, and then in the parameters of this Phong, let's change the bump scale up to about 3, and then change the button that says enable height map to be on, and then drag the edge operator onto the height map that we just enabled for the Phong. So I select the Phong and then drag the edge operator into the field that says height map. And then in the parameters of the Phong, just change the parallax scale to about 0.5. And now the BB8 head has some depth to it. BB8 is looking pretty good, but it looks pretty shiny, so let's add a little bit of dirt or some smudges to it to make it look a little bit more realistic. I'm going to go up to the BB8 body operators that we have. And just above the BB8 texture image file that you have, just above the image file for the BB8 texture, let's go ahead and add a new operator. And then under the top category, click on noise, place that noise operator somewhere above the BB8 texture. And I found that with the noise operator, you can go to the parameters and change them so that the noise looks somewhat like dirt or smudges. Change the period to 2. Change the harmonics to about 6. Change the harmonic gain to about 0.8. Change the exponent to about 1.2. Change the amplitude to about 0.14. And change the offset to about 1. So we basically made a smudgy kind of surface using the noise operator. Now let's add a new operator somewhere to the right of that noise operator. And in the top category, we just want to click on composite and then drop composite somewhere to the right of noise. Now connect noise to composite and connect the BB8 texture for the body to composite as well. And now we just need to tell TouchDesigner to use the composite for the Phong instead of the texture that we downloaded previously. So just drag and drop composite onto Phong and then click on color map. And if we look at the body of the BB8 now, you can see it looks a little bit smudgier than it was before. So you can just play with that kind of setup to add some smudges to the BB8 body. And I actually thought that the body of that still didn't look dirty enough. Let's go ahead and do basically the same thing we just did, but let's do it with a brown color to make it look like it has some dirt on it. So let's click on the noise operator that we just created and copy that. Let's paste that somewhere above itself. And then in the parameters for that new noise operator we just dropped, let's go ahead and change the seed to anything. I don't know, somewhere around 1,000 or whatever. It doesn't matter. If you change the seed, then that means it's going to be different than the previous noise operator we dropped. So now let's add a constant operator above our new noise operator. So just add a new operator, and in the top category, just go ahead and click on constant, and then drop the constant operator somewhere above that new noise operator. Now in the parameters for the constant operator, let's go ahead and click on that white box that says color, and then slide the hue slider somewhere between red and yellow. And eventually you should see kind of a brownish color. So yeah, just make a brown color out of that. Once you have a brown color in the constant operator, just go ahead and add a new operator. And from the top category, we're going to click on composite, and then drop composite somewhere to the right of the constant operator that you created. And now just connect constant and noise to the comp operator just like this. I connected constant, now let's connect noise. And for that new comp operator, let's go to the parameters of that, and let's just change the operation drop-down menu to soft light. So click on soft light, and then click on the button that says swap operation order, and you should have something that looks kind of like this. That's just like what we made before, but now this is a brown color, so it should look kind of like dirt. Connect the output of the new comp to the input of the old comp that we created. And now you should see some also dirt on the body of the BB8. And if you look on my screen here, if you look in this part of the screen, you can see there's some dirt in that kind of region of the BB8. And then you can see some of our smudges on the other part of BB8. So that's pretty much it for the BB8. At this point, I would just kind of add some smudges and dirt to the head of the BB8, but I think you should be able to figure that out by the way that we did that for the body. At this point, you should have a decent looking BB8.